Inspiring teachers' amazing response to rich kids' mockery exposed. Discover the surprising transformation of a high school underdog. Jake sat in the back of the classroom, heart racing and fingers trembling as he prepared to defend his ethics project in science class. The whispers had started again. "Look at the poor kid," they taunted. And Kyle, that smug kid with the designer clothes and the arrogant grin, was always the ringleader. Today's discussion on wealth and morality felt like a battlefield, where Jake stood alone, unfairly outmatched. He could already hear Kyle's voice slicing through the air like a knife, his laugh echoing a chilling confidence. "Hey, Jake," Kyle sneered, waving his hand dismissively. "What's it like not even being able to afford your pride?" Laughter erupted around the classroom. Jake's breath hitched as he fought the urge to sink into his seat, wishing for invisibility. The taunts tore at something deep within him, a sense of worth diminishing. Karen, a girl he'd occasionally shared a study table with, glanced briefly at him before diverting her eyes, the shame palpable. This wasn't just another day of being bullied. It was a stark reminder of his family's struggles. His parents worked tirelessly to keep the lights on, while he balanced after-school jobs and schoolwork. He had dreams, big ones, but in that moment they felt flimsy and distant, like paper boats cast adrift in a storm. But what stung most was Kyle's effortless mockery, aimed to fracture what little self-esteem Jake had left. The discussion progressed, building tension. Questions hung in the air, unresolved and disturbing. Jake felt trapped in a vice grip of inadequacy. Was he nothing more than a charity case? It infuriated him and yet twisted his insides with fear. Fear that he'd never measure up. Fear that he was utterly defined by his financial status. The more Kyle spoke, the harder the weight pressed on Jake's chest. He could almost hear his thoughts scream, "You'll never belong." Before the sting of humiliation could settle deeper, Ms. Thompson intervened. "Kyle, that's not okay," she said firmly. Silence swept through the room. Jake watched her intently, hoping for something, anything that might shift the spotlight away from him. Miss Thompson shared her own struggles from childhood, painting a vivid picture of challenges that had forged her into the person she was today. "Wealth doesn't define a person," she insisted, her voice igniting something deep within Jake. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Jake's heart thumped furiously, a mix of inspiration and uncertainty flooding his veins. Ms. Thompson's words remained a springboard for introspection. Could he truly rise above Kyle's cruelty? A new determination sparked within him. Driven by her encouragement, he poured every ounce of energy into his groundbreaking science project. Hours melted into days as he wrestled with complexities that made his head spin. But Kyle's smirk never seemed far. Would he ridicule Jake if he succeeded? As the competition approached, Jake's anxiety spiraled. He grappled with lingering self-doubt. Was he just a fool hoping for a miracle? The thought of Kyle's relentless bullying loomed over him like a dark cloud, yet whispers of possibility fluttered in his chest. The surprise occurred when Kyle, of all people, offered support, an alliance that made Jake's head spin. He felt the weight of expectations tangling with trepidation. Was Kyle truly attempting to change? Jake stood on the precipice of recognition and acceptance, but was still gripped by the shadows of his past. He felt raw, exposed, and desperate for clarity, wrestling with whether he could ever fully embrace the chance at success before him. The tension lingered, thick and electric, teasing the edge of his unraveling courage. Would he let his former bully dictate his outcomes? Or could he seize this moment and redefine himself on his own terms? The answers eluded him, lurking just out of reach as the day approached. Jake stood at the door of the science lab, heart racing as he glanced at the clock on the wall. Time felt like a thief, stealing moments of preparation. The room buzzed with an anticipation that left a bitter taste in his mouth. He could envision Kyle's smug smile, poised to tear him down the moment he faltered. Still, Miss Thompson's voice echoed in his mind, urging him to believe in his worth. Determined to silence his inner critic, Jake took a deep breath. He turned toward the large poster board that showcased his project on sustainable energy. It represented every late night, every ounce of dedication stitched into his being. This was more than just a grade. It was a personal declaration of his potential, a defense against ridicule and a testament to his struggle. As classmates shuffled in, their laughter rang like sharp bells, but Jake focused. He began humming softly to stifle the noise around him, slipping into a mental space where doubt couldn't reach him. He had worked tirelessly on this. He was proud of the intricate models he'd built and the thorough research he'd conducted. For once, the narrative was his to tell. Jake's hands moved instinctively as he arranged his materials on the table. He watched as Kyle approached with a crowd of onlookers, his expression blending curiosity with the eagerness to exploit any weakness. "What's this? Solar panels made out of cardboard?" Kyle chuckled, glancing at his friends who followed suit with mocking laughter. Jake clenched his fists under the table, battling the hot wave of shame threatening to erupt. But instead of retreating into that familiar space of despair, he straightened his back and shot back. "Actually, it's a prototype to demonstrate accessibility to sustainable solutions. You could learn a thing or two from it." The words surprised even him, tasting foreign on his tongue, but exhilarating nonetheless. Kyle's brow furrowed for a moment, and Jake caught a glimpse of uncertainty behind the arrogance. It was an opening. A rare moment where Jake had shifted the power dynamic. The lingering support from Ms. Thompson flared in his chest. He could feel the subtle winds of change. His heart beat louder as he began his presentation, speaking about the importance of renewable resources and their potential to uplift communities like his own. Jake sensed Karen from the corner of his eye, watching intently. Her presence anchored him, and he elaborated on the technical aspects, knowing that each word he spoke started to weave a narrative of resilience. He recounted his own struggles and the weight of stigma tied to his socio-economic status, inviting his classmates to reflect rather than ridicule. As he built momentum, he noticed Kyle's expression morph into one of begrudging recognition. The laughter diminished, replaced by contemplative whispers. For the first time, Jake felt that the entire class was listening, not judging, but actually engaging. The deeper he delved into his project, the more he saw flickers of respect from his peers. He was no longer just the poor kid. He was becoming a voice for possibility. When he finished, silence blanketed the room, thick with contemplation. Then, to his astonishment, one of Kyle's friends applauded, breaking the spell. Others soon joined in, clapping with genuine enthusiasm. Jake's heart swelled. The clouds of fear parted, revealing a brighter horizon. But just as he soaked in that moment, Kyle crossed his arms, a sharp smile on his face. "Nice job, Jake. But remember, one project doesn't make you a winner." The challenge hung in the air, heavy and tangible, igniting a new fire within Jake. This confrontation was far from over. Kyle's words had unleashed a challenge, a quest for him to not only prove himself, but to unearth the depths of his own resilience. With a newfound determination coursing through him, Jake realized he couldn't let mere words dictate his journey anymore. He had much to prove, and the specter of Kyle's disdain would fuel his resolve. As he stepped away from the podium, he felt adrenaline rush through him, lighting the path ahead. The allure of retribution mixed with ambition beckoned. What was next? Would he stand firm against Kyle's skepticism or rise beyond it, transforming the very grounds of their high school hierarchy? Jake took a breath, promising himself he would seize every opportunity that lay ahead. As he left the lab, the tension brewed, an unyielding force pressing him toward the uncharted depths of his own potential and the confrontation that awaited him. Jake's mind raced in the aftermath of his presentation, energized yet apprehensive. A mix of admiration and rivalry simmered within the classroom walls, whispering his name among newfound respect and lingering doubt. But Jake knew he couldn't bask in the afterglow. Kyle's pointed remark had stung and echoed in his mind, reminding him of the uphill battle still ahead. He walked through the halls, each step heavy with the weight of Kyle's dismissal. One project didn't make a winner. As he navigated the sea of students, he felt like a toddler learning to walk, wobbly, yet defiant. There was a new determination filtering through his veins, a desire to rise above their established hierarchy, but it would require more than just one presentation. Reaching Miss Thompson's classroom, he found her arranging books on the shelf. Without thinking, he stepped forward, a sense of urgency pushing him. "Miss Thompson, can we talk?" Her warm smile reassured him. "Of course, Jake. I heard your presentation was impressive." "Thanks, but I need your advice on how to keep this momentum going," he implored, his voice trembling slightly. "I don't want to let it die. I want to prove I'm more than just that cardboard project." She studied him for a moment, noticing the spark in his eyes. "It's about who you want to become, not just what you achieve. What's your next move?" Jake paused, heart racing. He envisioned Kyle's smirk, a constant reminder of the challenge ahead. "I want to continue this project, expand it, maybe even get it recognized outside of class. I think it's important. People need to see these solutions." Miss Thompson nodded, eyes glimmering with encouragement. "That's a fantastic goal, Jake, but it'll take planning. You need to reach out to others, gather support. Organizations, local businesses, engage your community." The idea blossomed inside him, roots digging deeper. "Engage my community," he repeated, tasting the power of the words. Every sneer and scoff he had faced from Kyle faded slightly in the face of a growing mission. "But you can't stop at just passion," she cautioned, inserting a grounding reminder. "You'll encounter skepticism just like Kyle's. You must anticipate that and be prepared to broaden your vision." Jake's resolve flared. "I will. I won't back down. I have something to say." She smiled, a mixture of pride and wisdom dancing in her expression. "I believe you, Jake, but remember, it's also about how you present yourself. Stay professional, steady, and focused on your message. Confidence will be your ally." After their conversation, Jake left the classroom feeling like a different person. The path seemed clearer now, a way to combat Kyle's taunts and rewrite the narrative surrounding him. He envisioned reaching out to local businesses and schools, presenting his ideas on sustainable solutions, gathering allies who would understand and admire his commitment. Weeks passed and gelid mornings merged into brighter afternoons. Jake started to draft emails, contacts, and proposals, each step invigorating him. He spent long hours refining his project, creating not just a demonstration, but an actionable plan reflective of his dreams. Issues he once felt powerless over now ignited fervor within him. Yet with each forward movement, doubt whispered behind him, echoing Kyle's ridicule like a ghost. "One project doesn't make a winner." The words burrowed into his thoughts, teasing his anxiety. Would he truly make a difference? Could he build support strong enough to challenge the currents of skepticism he faced? The thought gnawed at him, intensifying his determination. He would prove Kyle wrong, but he had yet to confront him head-on. In the shadows, the rivalry loomed, waiting for the right moment to reopen the lingering wounds. With renewed energy, Jake began to strategize his approach. He envisioned an event, a showcase where his ideas could shine, where he could finally present tangible results and transform ridicule into acknowledgement. The plan solidified in his mind as he turned the final page of his notes, A flicker of excitement danced in his chest, cultivating an electric tension. He would dare to confront Kyle directly, inviting him to his project's unveiling. But would he have the support he needed? And more importantly, would Kyle accept his challenge or dismiss it as a mere ploy? The stakes felt higher than ever, and Jake understood this moment would define him. As he leaned back in his chair, the crisp air of the classroom wrapping around him, he made a promise. He would no longer shy away from challenges. He was ready to stand tall, ready to face Kyle once more, ready to take the next leap into the unknown. For the first time, he felt he held the reins of his destiny tightly in his grip. What awaited him at the pinnacle of this challenge? Would he find victory, or succumb to the shadows of doubt once more? Jake awoke the next morning with a mix of excitement and trepidation, the implications of his plan swirling in his mind. He had narrowed down a date for his project's unveiling, but today needed to be the day he gathered the essential support to breathe life into his vision. After the first few classes, he approached a group of students hanging out in the cafeteria, his heart pounding in rhythm with the uncertainty of what might unfold. It was Kyle and his crew, laughter bubbling around them like a protective barrier. The sound seemed to mock him, each peal another reminder of how vulnerable he felt. "Hey, Jake!" Kyle's voice sliced through the air. "What brings you over? Planning to show us another one of your projects?" The laughter erupted again, and Jake's resolve wavered, but he gritted his teeth and stepped forward. "Actually, I was hoping to talk to some of you about something I'm working on. Something bigger than the last?" Kyle interrupted, feigning interest but eyes glinting with disdain. "Is it made out of extra cardboard this time? Maybe a life-size replica? That would be a hit." Every sneer aimed his way felt like sandpaper on his soul. But voices, echoing Ms. Thompson's instructions, surged in his mind. "Stay professional. Focus on your message." "I'm expanding the project into a community initiative," Jake pressed on, his tone level despite the internal storm. "It's about implementing sustainable solutions that can make a real impact. I want to show everyone that we can change how we think about our resources." A few faces softened with genuine interest, but Kyle leaned back with a mock shrug. "Good luck with that. Don't forget to invite me when you crash and burn." That's when Jake realized Kyle's existence was both a challenge and a catalyst for his growth. In that moment, he lowered his guard just enough to free his voice from its constraints. "You know, Kyle, part of me believes that if everyone took this seriously, we could actually create something worth being proud of. Even you might be surprised what can be accomplished when you stop tearing others down." The cafeteria grew quiet, the weight of Jake's words hanging in the air. Kyle's expression shifted, perhaps registering the sincerity that underpinned Jake's challenge. For a brief moment, vulnerability replaced arrogance across Kyle's face, yet it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by disdain. "Touché, Jake, but until you show results, it's all just talk, isn't it?" Stinging yet empowering, the rebuke spurred Jake forward. He left the cafeteria, aware of the shadows still lingering behind him, but choosing to banish Kyle's influence from his thoughts. He turned his focus to the other students who had looked on, who might join him in some capacity. As the lunch hour wrapped up, Jake approached a group that had expressed interest during their classes. "Hey, I'd love to get together to brainstorm. I see potential in pulling this initiative off, but I can't do it alone." He felt their hesitance, but pressed on. "Entering this together solidifies our original intention of creating something meaningful. I want this to resonate, not just with our peers, but beyond." Slowly, nods began to emerge. A couple of faces lit up with acceptance, inspired by his confidence and new resolve. It felt like the warm threads of support were knitting together, and for once, doubts quietly began receding. By the end of the day, plans had been made for Jake's gathering, a casual meeting after school, an opportunity to flesh out ideas with peers that shared an inclination toward his project. But as he rode home, basking in the sunlight of potential growth, doubt crept back in. Would they rally behind his vision? Could the excitement spark real change? Whether they would band together or retreat at the first sign of adversity lingered in uncertain shadows. Jake swallowed hard, knowing Kyle would see this as a moment for triumph if he failed. Yet the flicker of hope ignited within him burned brighter with each passing day. As he pulled into his driveway, determination swelled in his chest. The wheel was turning, but could he truly steer the course, or would the whispers of doubt once again sway the direction? The time had come to face the consequences of his courage. He realized this wasn't merely about showcasing a project, it was about discovery, the truth behind his ability to inspire and create lasting change. Would he realize that potential, or would he remain under Kyle's shadow? With the meeting ahead, question loomed like an eclipse. What would he discover about himself in this pivotal moment? Jake spent the rest of his evening fine-tuning his presentation, his vision mapped out on paper, vivid with pie charts, bold strategies, and actionable steps. Each bullet point felt like a heartbeat, connecting him deeper to the purpose he aimed to achieve. As he arranged his notes, however, he couldn't shake the chill of self-doubt that clung to him like a heavy coat. What if the other students laughed? What if they turned their backs on him, just like Kyle? The thought paralyzed him for a moment, coaxing insecurity to the forefront of his mind. He sank onto his bed, staring at the ceiling, grappling with the wavering line between ambition and fear. Sweeping aside his doubts, Jake turned on his laptop, conducting late-night research to solidify his arguments. As data points rolled in, he discovered compelling statistics about community engagement and environmental impact. The numbers danced before his eyes, grounding his thoughts in reality. A sense of purpose quickly replaced uncertainty. Morning arrived, laden with anticipation. Students gathered in twos and threes outside the classroom, mingling before the meeting. Jake stood nearby, hands trembling slightly as he clutched his folder, his lifeline, as if it could shield him from the impending judgment. He stole glances at faces that sparked his hope. Show them the vision, he told himself. Let them see the possibility. Students trickled in, settling into their chairs, and Jake's heart picked up an erratic rhythm. The atmosphere buzzed with a mix of excitement and collation. He noticed Allison sitting in the front row, her interest evident in her attentive posture. She had always been insightful. Jake knew if he could capture her support, others would surely follow. "Thanks for coming, everyone," he began, his voice unintentionally wavering but igniting almost instantly into conviction. "I'm really excited to share an initiative focused on sustainable practices. Together, I believe we can create a project that inspires real change." As he laid out his plan, pieces of his enthusiasm fell into place, the path forward illuminating his ideas as they unfolded with clarity. He shared his research, connecting statistics with actionable strategies that could transform their environment. Simple steps that everyone could comprehend and undertake. Allison nodded, and as he continued, Jake detected the stirrings of curiosity in his audience. Questions emerged. How do we start? What resources might we need? The dialogue shifted from skepticism to mutual investment, each inquiry building momentum. Jake felt the surge of energy around him, fueling his passion further. But then, out of nowhere, Kyle sauntered into the room, his gaze intent on undermining the newfound camaraderie. "Is this the part where we get to hear about your great ideas again?" he mocked, arms crossed, feigning boredom. A wave of discomfort swept through the room as the previous enthusiasm took a hit. Jake inhaled deeply. A mantle of clarity settled over him. That challenge, Kyle's bait, now felt less daunting. "Actually, Kyle, it's a space for open dialogue. I'd gladly welcome your thoughts if you have constructive criticism." The response fell from his lips, surprisingly composed. Kyle's smirk faltered for just a second as others exchanged gazes, his antagonism no longer the centerpiece. Jake pressed on, seizing the moment not to combat rivalry, but to deepen the conversation. He shifted quickly back to the initiative, emphasizing how collaboration could yield results that aligned with a greater purpose. The meeting flowed again, ideas pouring forth, invigorated by camaraderie rather than the shadows of derision. Jake left the class feeling empowered. Each sentence he spoke reflected not only his vision, but his growing resilience against dissent. The day transitioned back toward routine, yet Jake's mind continued racing. This singular meeting opened doors he hadn't thought possible. Would this newfound unity hold? Would the students maintain their drive? As he emerged from class, a text notification chimed on his phone. It was a message from Allison asking to meet later. His heart skipped. Perhaps she had suggestions, or maybe more insight on gathering the others. But as he contemplated the invitation, uncertainty nestled back into his thoughts, and the precarious balance of hope and doubt hung in the air like a tightrope awaiting a next step. What could Allison's true intentions be, and should he prepare for the risks involved as he ventured further into collaboration? The next moment seemed poised to unfold a new layer of his personal journey, one he wasn't sure he was ready to face. Jake paced around his apartment, anxiety swirling in his stomach like a chaotic storm. The invitation from Allison loomed over him like a beacon. Her text had been simple, yet it carried the weight of uncertainty. Would she offer support, or simply critique his attempt to rally their peers? Either route threatened his confidence, already fragile from the confrontation with Kyle. The clock ticked loudly as he prepared for their meeting. With every minute that passed, his imagination filled with possibilities, some hopeful, others disastrous. Jake glanced at the mirror, straightening his posture as he rehearsed what to say. Focus on the initiative, he told himself, but a gnawing voice reminded him of Kyle's mocking tone. How could he dismiss that so easily? When the doorbell rang, it shattered his thoughts. He opened the door to find Allison smiling, her presence a refreshing contrast to the turbulence inside him. "Hey, Jake, I'm excited to hear more about your project," she said with genuine interest. He motioned for her to step inside, and they settled at the small table cluttered with papers and charts from his previous work. "Thanks for coming. I hope you have some ideas about how to get everyone involved," he stammered, his nervousness creeping back as he clawed for assurance in her eyes. Allison glanced at the papers scattered before her, her brows furrowing in concentration. "This looks really well thought out. You've done your homework. I think if we focus on practical steps and the benefits to our campus community, others might latch onto it." As she spoke, Jake could feel the weights on their shoulders lightening. They brainstormed fervently, devising small tasks that felt attainable. Each suggestion from Allison reignited his enthusiasm, filling him with purpose. Together, they crafted an outline that felt more robust and inclusive, veering further from his initial vision into something broader than he had anticipated. Halfway through their session, just as things were flowing smoothly, a knock interrupted them. Jake hesitated, a twist of dread flooding him. When he opened the door, Kyle stood there, his expression one of feigned indifference, but with an unmistakable edge. "I figured you were hiding," Kyle said, not bothering to mask the condescension in his voice. "Do you really think you can pull this off? Because honestly, it sounds like a lot of hot air." Jake felt the suffocating grip of self-doubt tightening around him, but he could not afford to let it wrap him too tightly. He took a moment, inhaling deeply. "This isn't about what you think of me, Kyle. It's about generating positive change. Something you wouldn't understand, I guess." Kyle leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms defiantly. "I understand perfectly. You think this is all just a game to impress people. Newsflash, most don't care. You'll end up face down, just like you always do." The words hung in the air, brimming with bitter tension. Jake could feel Allison's eyes on him with unspoken encouragement. He couldn't let Kyle's taunts derail his mission. "I'm not afraid of failing, Kyle. If I can inspire even one person to change their habits, that's victory enough." Kyle rolled his eyes, attempting to belittle Jake's determination further, but in that moment, Jake felt something shift within him. He recognized that standing firm, instead of retreating in the face of hostility, was a testament to his character. It was not just about the initiative anymore, it had become a personal journey of growth. Calmly closing the door, Jake returned to the table, where both he and Allison exchanged looks that conveyed understanding and resilience. Jokes and jeers would not diminish what they were creating. As they resumed their planning, Jake felt a puppeting worry within himself shift towards a grounded sense of self. He recognized that the journey ahead would not be devoid of challenges or critics like Kyle, yet the struggle he faced now held a promise, a deeper understanding of himself than he ever thought possible. "I realize now that I'll need to develop strategies to counter that negativity," Jake said, his voice steadier than before. "Maybe we should prepare an approach for presenting our ideas and defending them when needed." Allison smiled, softening the previous tension. "Great idea. I think we can create a supportive environment for everyone involved, one that empowers their voices along with yours." With renewed clarity, the two of them dove back into their plans, forging ahead into the unknown, but with a sense of purpose solidifying around them. In the midst of the storm, Jake felt a flicker of hope igniting within him, anchoring his beliefs even further. As the hours passed and the sun began to set, Jake glanced at the clock, thoughts swirling around the next steps of their plan. What if the test of resolve came sooner than expected? Would he be ready when the moment of truth arrived? He caught Allison's gaze, and in her eyes he found the courage to confront whatever awaited them ahead. But the question lingered, looming over his thoughts like a whisper from the dark. Were they truly prepared for the challenges that lay ahead? The next morning, Jake woke up with a strange blend of excitement and anxiety buzzing in his veins. The idea of putting their plans into action surged within him, yet the specter of Kyle's derisive comments curled around his thoughts like a serpent. He pushed himself out of bed, raising his chin defiantly to mask the trepidation that clawed at him. After a quick breakfast, he pulled on a hoodie, recognizing the comfort in its fabric as the first tangible step toward facing the day. It was time to solidify his resolve, starting with the imminent meeting. Sitting back down at the table, cluttered with notes and vision boards, he found himself staring at the outlines he and Allison had painstakingly crafted. They weren't just half-baked fantasies. They were grounded in his frustrations and hopes. Jake realized that the stakes were becoming deeply personal. This wasn't merely a project, it was a manifestation of his values. He grabbed a pen and began jotting down potential responses to criticisms they might face. Kyle's voice edged into his mind, stirring a fierce determination. If Kyle could mock him, then he could also arm himself with well-thought-out rebuttals, aimed to redirect the conversation from hostile to constructive. With every line written, a sense of clarity washed over him. He had the power to reclaim the narrative surrounding his ambitions and dreams. Turning the tables meant not only preparing for confrontation, but embracing it as an opportunity to illustrate the value of the initiative, an empowering lesson for his peers. Finding strength through vulnerability would yield more than hollow bravado. It would resonate authenticity. The hour for the small group meeting drew closer, and Jake could feel his heart pound in rhythm with his decisive actions. He entered the lecture hall, the nerves tumbling violently in his stomach, but with the fire of purpose igniting within. The room held an array of familiar faces, some eager, others skeptical. Kyle's presence, with his ever-present sneer, sent a fresh ripple of resistance through him. As he set up the front, Jake glanced around. He noted the body language of his peers, some arms crossed, others gesturing hesitantly, uncertainty evident. It was in this moment that he confronted his own anxiety. Public speaking was rarely simple, yet for him the stakes compounded. He had to convey not just the project but the very essence of why it mattered, beyond grades or social approval. "Thank you all for coming," Jake started, forcing his voice to smooth over the choppy waters of his emotions. "Today, I want to talk about making meaningful changes that can benefit each of us and contribute positively to our environment." As he navigated through his presentation, each word felt more solid, the arguments more polished. He could feel Kyle's eyes fixated on him, and it propelled him further, transforming fear into fuel. For every sneer Kyle offered, Jake countered with facts that highlighted potential benefits. The narrative began to shift. Acknowledgement blossomed from was once a room of doubt. Questions began flying across the room, some pointed and others genuinely curious. Jake welcomed them all. "What about the concerns we need to tackle?" Nicole, a friend from his environmental studies class, asked. Instead of faltering, Jake turned to the notes he had prepared, anticipating objections and ready to work through them. He realized that engaging in genuine dialogue not only showcased his dedication, but revealed a confidence that began to drown out the prior insecurities. Each exchange felt like a puzzle piece clicking into place, solidifying not just the plan, but his stance within the group. By the conclusion of the meeting, though still targeted by Kyle's dismissive remarks, the open discussion resulted in a surprising outcome. New opinions were emerging, and folks expressed interest in actively contributing toward the initiative. The room was alive, charged with a sense of collaboration that Jake had only hoped for. He stepped outside the lecture hall, heart racing from the exhilaration of engagement and the realization of personal growth. Yes, critics like Kyle would always hover like unwelcome shadows. But Jake fortified his resolve, not to conform to detractors, but to rise above them. As he looked ahead, a tantalizing thought flickered. Perhaps this was merely the first of many such confrontations. He was determined to keep evolving, to leverage this experience into future endeavors. And yet, another question loomed. Was this newfound confidence truly robust enough to withstand the inevitable challenges that lay ahead? With those words circling in his mind, he couldn't shake the feeling that the real test was yet to come. He braced himself, heart pounding as he prepared for Katie's feedback, knowing her opinion could either uplift or dismantle the foundation they had begun to build. Jake's mind raced as he approached Katie's office. He had been anticipating this moment since the end of the meeting, knowing that her feedback was essential. Would she see the value in his ideas, or would she echo Kyle's cynicism? As he knocked lightly, a rush of anxiety surged through him, but he quelled it with a conscious breath. Confidence had taken root, and he would not allow it to wither. "Come in," Katie called, her voice warm yet professional. Jake opened the door, finding her seated at her desk, a stack of papers scattered before her. Her keen eyes lifted to meet his, and he noticed her faint smile as he stepped inside. "How did it go?" she inquired, genuine curiosity evident in her tone. "It went surprisingly well. People seemed interested. There were questions, some tough ones, but I felt like I could handle them." Jake replied, his own energy propelling him. The meeting played out in his mind like a short film, each frame an echo of his newfound resilience. Katie leaned forward, eyebrows raised in approval. "That's excellent to hear. It sounds like you genuinely engaged them. That's half the battle, Jake. And what did you learn about your own capabilities during the process?" The question caught him off guard, and he paused for a moment, reflecting on the moments of doubt he had overcome during his presentation. "I think I realized I can convey my passion effectively, even when faced with criticism. I'm more articulate under pressure than I knew. Katie's eyes sparkled with encouragement. That's a substantial realization. Articulation and the ability to engage in dialogue are powerful skills. I encourage you to build on this momentum. We all have opportunities to grow if we embrace them, and it seems you did just that. But beneath the praise, Jake could feel tension brewing within him. Would Katie's validation hold strong, even when faced with Kyle's dismissive remarks? What if the next time I face them, I can't maintain this confidence, he blurted out, the vulnerability slipping through despite his best efforts to appear composed. Katie regarded him thoughtfully before responding. Self-doubt is natural, Jake. It doesn't diminish your ability. Instead, view it as a sign of growth. It's a signal that you care about your work and its reception. Her words resonated deeply, especially the distinction between feeling doubt and allowing it to shape his narrative. Suddenly, the weight of the moment became tangible. He was evolving, not merely as a student, but as an advocate for his beliefs. How he reacted to adversity would define his journey forward. With newfound determination, he decided to embrace strategic vulnerability, transforming any fear into a canvas for his future. Thank you, Katie. I think I understand. Jake felt as though a door to deeper self-awareness had creaked open, revealing an eagerness to learn from the challenges that lay ahead. The confrontation with Kyle and all the criticism he could likely dish out no longer felt like an insurmountable barrier. It was simply another step in a long leap toward his personal growth. Before you go, I want to add something, Katie said, her voice steady. There will always be skeptics, but what makes you valuable is how you choose to address them, with clarity and confidence. The time will come when you need to stand firm in your beliefs, and I'll be here to guide you. As Jake nodded, absorbing her words, a weight lifted from his shoulders. He realized he had the support he needed alongside growing self-assurance. The path to his goals became clearer, illuminated by small victories. As he walked out of the office, a sudden thought struck him. The unpredictable dynamics of feedback and mentorship would continue shaping his perspective. He needed to test this newfound belief system against real-world challenges as they surfaced. With his mind racing with potential scenarios, he considered how he might respond when faced with the next obstacle, particularly from Kyle. What would that confrontation look like? Would he remain rooted in his principles, or would self-doubt threaten to pull him under? The internal conflict within him ignited once again, urging him onward toward the next inevitable challenge. The air felt electric as Jake left Katie's office, anticipation mingling with anxiety about his upcoming interactions with Kyle. The interactions that had once left him feeling muted and small, now transformed into opportunities for growth. He was ready to face Kyle, not as a man vulnerable to mockery, but as someone with a voice that could resonate. Set against the backdrop of the bustling office, Jake took a moment to collect his thoughts. His colleagues flitted by, some engaged in hushed discussions about work, others laughing together in jovial camaraderie. Despite the noise, he felt a strange sense of detachment. This newfound confidence, ignited by Katie's encouragement, had opened his eyes to the importance of speaking his truth. But would it endure when faced with direct confrontation? Strolling into the break room, Jake could already hear Kyle's distinctive voice, characterized by sharp sarcasm and condescension. So, Jake, did you run for student body president, or just play the role of most likely to be invisible in that meeting? Kyle's laughter ringed out, accompanied by the chuckles of his admirers. In that moment, Jake's heart raced as he became acutely aware of the familiar feeling of dread creeping back. Yet, Katie's words echoed in his mind. Self-doubt was a sign that he actually cared. He paused, inhaling deeply, weighing his response. The urge to deflect, to retreat into silence, pulsed against the rising tide of determination within him. Actually, I appreciated how the meeting turned out, Kyle. People engaged, asked questions, and I think I articulated my stance well, unlike some who might not have the guts to step up, Jake replied, choosing to reframe the moment rather than succumb to aggression. Unexpectedly, quiet settled around him. Kyle's smirk faltered, replaced by an expression of surprise. The room seemed to hold its breath. Had Jake really just stood up for himself? For a fleeting second, hope surged within him, a tangible shift in his inner narrative. He had always viewed confrontation as a battlefield. Perhaps with clarity and confidence, it could instead be a dialogue. He seized upon this possibility, shifting further into the uncomfortable territory of self-advocacy. I understand not everyone might agree, and that's fine. Dissent can lead to great discussions. Your perspective matters, Kyle. We just have to find common ground. The eyes in the break room quickly exchanged glances, some intrigued, others skeptical. Kyle opened his mouth as if to respond, but the moment seemed to stretch on indefinitely, and a fraction of vulnerability flickered across his face that Jake had rarely witnessed. This litany of self-assurance was foreign yet invigorating. But just as quickly as it arrived, uncertainty brewed. What if Kyle retorted with the kind of sharp critique that would cut him down? What if this moment was a fluke, a brief foray into confidence doomed to crumble under pressure? Jake forced himself to remain grounded, ready to step forward if necessary. "You think what you said makes you better than me, don't you, Jake?" Kyle finally said, his tone dripping with a mix of disdain and genuine curiosity. "You think you can waltz in with your ideas and just change everything?" "No," Jake said, his voice steady. "But I do think everyone deserves to be heard, including you." With the tension escalating, Jake was acutely aware of the shift in his heart, a ball of nervous energy now transformed into resolve. He could feel the eyes of his colleagues burning into him, their rapt attention offering both support and pressure. Would he let that paralyze him, or would he lean into it? The confrontation with Kyle wasn't just a challenge, it was a pivotal turning point, an opportunity to forge his identity amidst skepticism. But as he stood silently facing Kyle, Jake couldn't shake the thought. Would he be able to maintain this newfound clarity in the throes of a deeper conflict? The moment of reply loomed in the air, like a silent storm, and Jake wondered if he was truly prepared for the next round. Could he remain that beacon of confidence when the tides turned darker? As tension quelled and anticipation built, Jake recognized that this was only the beginning. What awaited him in the upcoming confrontations would define not just his career, but also who he was becoming within himself. Jake stood tall in the shadows of the break room, a tension-filled moment stretching out before him. He had transformed immensely from the timid boy who once cowered at Kyle's barbs. Now he was ready to embrace the subtle complexity of confrontation. Rather than shrinking away, he stepped into the light of his new identity, prepared to chart his course with clarity. "Look," Kyle uttered, breaking the charged silence, "you can call it whatever you want, but it's just a school project. You think you're changing lives just by talking a big game?" Dismissiveness dripped from Kyle's words like venom, aimed squarely at Jake's newfound confidence. But rather than feeling overwhelmed, Jake drew on the resurgence of resilience deep within him. "This isn't just a project for me, Kyle. It's about instilling change and addressing our community's needs. Yes, it's a school assignment, but it could lead to real impact beyond these walls, and that's worth striving for," he asserted, weaving conviction into his voice. The people in the room shifted, caught between a storm of rivalry and authenticity. Slowly, faces of curious peers began to emerge, curiosity eclipsing skepticism as they drew nearer to Jake's burgeoning narrative. Kyle's demeanor shifted, the disbelief etched into his features, revealing a moment of contemplation. It was a crucial turning point. Jake could feel it. Jake continued, using this momentum to craft his argument with finesse. Look, Kyle, you can choose to mock what I've been doing, but this isn't about being better. It's about inviting everyone to weigh in. We only thrive through collaboration and making an effort to empower each other. Even someone like you, who can't seem to see beyond their privilege, might find value here. The tension in the room eased. The dismissal from Kyle that had long shrouded Jake's path started to give way to an atmosphere brimming with potential connection. The subtle shift marked not only a clash of ideals, it represented Jake's transformation. He had learned that vulnerability and strength were intertwined. In the wake of the confrontation, Jake felt a flood of determination race through him. This wasn't merely about proving Kyle wrong, it was about asserting his narrative, the one he'd carefully built through hours of hard work, mentorship, and self-discovery. His voice echoed with a newfound clarity, embodied with the assurance that he was no longer the sum of his circumstances, but the architect of his destiny. But it didn't stop there. As days turned into weeks, Jake enacted plans they had initially discussed, inviting classmates into his initiative. The meetings flourished, ideas bounced back and forth, and participation surged beyond his expectations. Fresh faces joined, some from the very groups that had once jeered at him. Each new ally transformed the corridor tension into collaborative synergy, driving Jake's vision forward. Even Kyle contacted Jake toward the end of the semester, tentatively asking how he could support the initiative. Initially conflicted, Jake had every reason to be skeptical, yet he recognized growth. No longer hiding behind his doubtful humor, Kyle was reaching for authenticity. Without hesitation, Jake welcomed him into the fold. Everyone can contribute something if they choose to turn their perspective around. By the end of the school year, Jake's project had not only garnered support, it had also become a beacon of change, celebrated for its innovative spirit. The local community engaged with the initiative, and future plans for expanding the reach began brewing. Jake had gained recognition, not just as a student overcoming adversity, but as an advocate for growth through education, community connection, and innovation. As the school year wrapped up, awards were presented for outstanding projects of the year. When Jake's name was called, he stepped up confidently, embracing the acknowledgement of his hard-fought efforts. The applause echoed around him as he took a proud moment to acknowledge not just the recognition, but the journey that lay beneath it. He had set out not only to change perceptions, but to challenge himself, an endeavor that redefined who he was. Returning to his seat, the applause dwindled, but a new understanding settled within him. The shadows of self-doubt had lifted. He was not simply a survivor of mockery. Jake was a voice of change, believing staunchly that with resilience and resolve, anyone could conquer their fears and find true fulfillment in advocating for what they cared about. This personal achievement, this profound evolution from an underdog to a recognized leader, was greater than any award. It was the knowledge that growth often comes draped in the fabric of challenges. As Jake looked around the room, filled with newfound friendships and camaraderie, he grasped that by embracing vulnerability, he had galvanized not just himself, but others to rise, unify, and greet the world with empowered hearts. As the chapter closed on this transformative year, he acknowledged the thrill of the path ahead, ready to dive deeper into his advocacy with confidence that felt solid, unshakable. This was just the beginning of a journey that promised not only personal triumph, but the capacity to inspire collective change beyond comprehension. Now, this story needs your support. You need to subscribe now to never miss another emotional awakening, triumph, and transformative story like Jake's. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure these powerful tales reach others who need them. Comment below with your reactions and your theories about Jake's inspiring journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who could use motivation and empowerment in their lives. Your engagement helps foster more stories of overcoming personal struggles.